Anyway, let's go on to a better movie called Zeros, 2018 movie. I was reading my notes earlier, and I was like, man, my notes are all over the place on this movie. Um, Look, they should make superhero movies for kids. You know, there should be superhero movies for kids, PG-13. After all, the concept of superheroes is basically for children. And I know I read comic books. I know I love comic books. I know I love the concept of superhero movies. But I also like the Deadpool movies, which were funny, you know. But a movie like this is a strong R rating. All right. And I think it's a tad more offensive than even Deadpool. I didn't see the third one. I saw 1 and 2, and that's it for the Deadpool. So that's all I'm referring to. But this is a story about two guys. Let's see if I remember the names. Ray. I think Ray. Let me double check. Yeah, Ray, Ken. No, Ken is over here marked by the red. And Gary. I forget the girl's name. Who cares? She's boring. Okay, so these two guys are like go to a costume party, and due to a snafu, Ray didn't get the costumes they wanted, so they had to get like an emergency costume. So they found a couple ninja costumes, dressed up like this, went to the costume party and got drunk, and so forth. And they're like, "Oh, we need to get some food in us." So they go and walk down to the local, convenience store. And they're in a convenience store. It's like, and I'm telling you, there's not one block of dialogue in this movie where there's not something funny being said. The comedy in this movie is like every single block of dialogue has something funny going on. And just sitting here describing the scene, they go to the convenience store and he's like, "Oh, hey, are these vegan?" He holds something up and puts it in his, just kidding, I don't give a shit, you know. And so he's like, and they get their stuff and they go up to the counter, right? And they're dressed as ninjas. It comes up to the counter and there's a Pakistani guy or something like that behind the counter. And he puts the stuff on the counter and he goes, "Oh, can I help you, ma'am?" And he goes, "What?" Like that. And at that moment, a robber comes in and like knocks him down and starts, "Give me the cash out of the drawer." And so these two drunk idiots fight off this robber pretty effectively and chase him off. And then they steal a bunch of merchandise because they're heroes and to go on their way. But Ray, who takes like comic books very, very seriously, he figures that's their origin story and they're destined to be superheroes now. And so he tries to convince Ken that this is what they're going to do. They're going to dress up as superheroes and go out and fight crime in Philadelphia. And I cannot tell you how many times they should have died in this movie, because this is how you get killed, is doing crazy stuff like this. But Ray's taking it incredibly seriously. Ken is the guy that you're supposed to be relatable to, most relatable to. I relate more to Ray because he started to get caring about the banter and how to be a superhero, right? And it's like, it starts taking himself very seriously about this. And so Ken is the one you're supposed to relate to because he's trying to woo this girl who's like a journalist. Yeah. And she's hot on the Schuylkill Strangler case, which is like another subplot that ends up in third act, culminating in third act. But Ken is like, "I don't know if we should be doing this," and Ray is like, "Of course we should be doing this." And Ken works at a pretzel factory or something like that. And Gary, the guy at the end, is just this weird rich guy who works with him and always comes up to his desk. He's super weird. All right, super weird. And he has the actual true like Bruce Wayne origin story. Like his parents were killed at the opera. They were trying to steal his mom's pearls. He was raised by his grandfather after that. He has a real like Bruce Wayne backstory, and that's why he's weird. And he's really super weird. But like I said, like every single piece of dialogue, there's something funny being said. Like there's a scene where they're at the office and he's eating a pretzel. And anytime these characters are eating, they're eating pretzels. All right. And what's his name? Gary comes up to Ken's desk, which he does frequently, and tries to engage Ken in conversation. And Ken, and they're sitting there, and their boss comes up to them, and the boss says, "So who's the president?" And they're like, "President? What? President of what?" And he's like, "President of the Friends Club." And Gary's like, "Me? Me? Me? I'm the president of the Best Friends Club?" And the boss starts berating him for wasting time at work by chatting. You know, it's just Always something funny going on. I don't want to spoil like all the jokes, but Pensive Ken, yeah. Gary is super weird. You know, he's got the trunk full of guns and wine. It's the back of his car. They call him. They get beat up several times in this movie. All right, they should have died. But they call up Gary one day, and he's like, I just called him, left a message. I don't know how long it's going to be. And then Gary pulls up, and there's like two guys in the backseat of his car. He's like, get out, get the hell out, and they jump out of the car. I don't know if he was like doing Lyft or Uber or something like that, but these guys just run off out of the car, and then he's like, hey guys, come on, get in the car. And I was like, what the hell were you up to? And then you find out later in the back of that car, in the trunk of his car, it's loaded with guns and wine. He's super weird. And anyway, Gary joins them in their crime fighting crusade, but like on this first night out, he gets stabbed by like a 10-year-old with a key. And then throughout the movie, the 10-year-old keeps showing up to stab Gary with the key again. It's a great gag, and they used it like 3 times. I think 3 is what they did. Rule of threes. Yeah, it's every single block of dialogue has something funny going on. I mean, just some things are popping up in my mind. And some of the situations they're in are hilarious too. Like there's a situation where they're talking, it's like somebody who knows Gary is like, oh, you know Gary? You hang out with Gary? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, and they're in a gay bar, because that's where Gary likes to dance away his feelings or whatever. Weird guy. So he's talking to him, and he's like, oh, Gary's the nicest guy ever. Oh, he's the nicest guy I ever met. Singing his praises, you know. He's such a nice guy. And, you know, and I met Daryl Hall. And these two guys are like, what, really? Daryl Hall? It's just, what? Brilliant line. And then there's a scene where this guy is riding around the city, yanking his crank to a block of Swiss cheese, and he's trying to pay women who are walking by to watch them. I'll give you $20 to watch. I'll go as high as 40. And so they confront this guy and just start beating the crap out of his car, trying to get him to stop yanking it. You know what I'm saying? So eventually, but they start like enjoying breaking the windows in the car too much, so they just end up yanking him out of the car and just beating the crap out of his car because it's fun. And the guy's still there with this block of cheese. He's like, can you please stop? And he was like, I'm so close. It's funny and weird, and definitely for adults. There's a scene where they confront these guys who are stealing band equipment out of a van outside a club. They're like, hey, what are you guys doing? And it's like, we're stealing the band's equipment. They're loading all the stuff out of the van and into the back of their truck. And he goes, what are those, horns? Yeah, man. What is this, a ska band? He's like, yeah. And he pulls out a card that has their band name on it. It's like Skankville or something like that. And they say, oh, guys, keep doing what you're doing. Go on. You're doing the world a favor. They're having a conversation while these guys are stealing all the stuff out of the band. One of the guys who was stealing the stuff comes up, hey, you guys want t-shirts? And they're like, yeah. Blows his nose, throws it on the ground. He goes, you guys are hilarious, and walks off. Like some crimes they're okay with, you know? And it's kind of what's risky about vigilantism. Oh, we're totally fine with that. Anyway, great laughs all throughout this movie. 10 of 13 stars. I would rate it higher, but I know that not everyone appreciates a movie like this as much as I do. It's about some very crazy people. Like, Ray's crazy. He's crazy, obviously. And so is Gary. And Ken, he ends up being dragged along into a big pile of crazy, and then he loses the girl because he's such the assholeness of his friends rubbed off on him. All right, so 10 of 13 stars. It's chock full of laughs. If you have a sense of humor and if you like laughing, you will be laughing throughout this entire movie.